Hey there, welcome to episode 73 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo, recording this at just before 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the 19th of July, 2024. Time is flying. Today we are going to be speaking about big company blues. Sorry, I made myself laugh with that. This was not, the original title was Start Update. 2 words, start, update, a little play on startup, update. But then I was thinking, there's got to be a reason someone would want to start something, be entrepreneurial, instead of working for the FANG companies. That's Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. Yeah, that's FANG. Now there should be an M instead of F, and Google is technically Alphabet. So it's a lot. I don't know if you can make a word with that. But the CrowdStrike thing today made me think, like, you know what? Big companies have lost their way, just like our political system. This is not about politics. Just about anything that you look at that grows in size, the motivation is always like profit or some sort of power or something. Microsoft, obviously. Microsoft, we don't have to touch that. The CrowdStrike thing, massive. It's being called the largest IT failure in history. It's global. It's impacting everything. You could argue whatever Skynet was going to do, this is probably second in magnitude. Skynet from Terminator, by the way. So I was like, you know what? It'd be interesting to take that tack. Like, look at big company stuff. How about let's keep it small? So that's the general tenor. But really, this episode's about a couple of quick updates on some of the things I'm pursuing, and a reminder that this whole program, Cafe Genius Impresarios are supposed to be people doing innovative things, entrepreneurial innovative things, perhaps. And so it's been some time since I've had a guest. Guests are difficult to cajole into spending some time on an audio program. Some will balk at anything. Some will ask, how many listeners do you have? Some would prefer a video, so we'll figure that out. But in the meantime, I'm always ready with an audio essay of some type. And today it is as I have described in the summary, which will ideally be found in the episode description wherever you found your audio programs, such as this one. And I've been remiss. I have not gone through and kind of double checked on the various places that this program is supposed to be found. The Apple iTunes configuration for a claimed show is slightly tedious. It's probably the most tedious of any of the big services. Spotify was also sort of annoying, but because I primarily publish through their Spotify for Podcasters portal, it's a lot of P words, a lot of plosives, sorry. It could have been worse, I'm sure. But claiming the show, sometimes the show will appear in places and I don't know where it's appearing. Other times it will. For example, I think it can be found through iTunes. If you are an iPhone podcast listener and you use whatever I'm not. But if you use their tools, ideally this program is found there. But I have not claimed it, so I'm not sure how that impacts things. Either way, I really need to make this show more visible and more findable, discoverable in the context of especially the greater Vegas area, since it is about entrepreneurialism and some of and innovation, the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem and related things. So because of the engagement platform, which we'll talk about shortly, that is the crux of my local startup effort. One will feed the other, so to speak. We should be able to discover local content creators, local influencers, if you like, local Instagram foodies, et cetera, in ways that are not always the algorithm. Sort of connect foodies with the places they're visiting more easily, for example. But in general, startups, people that are entrepreneurial. By the way, all these content creators, they're pretty much entrepreneurial. They started with a phone and an Instagram account or a TikTok account or something, and they've sort of fashioned their presence online. and they monetize it in their business. And oftentimes they have actual employees. They have video cinematographers. They have video production. Maybe they have audio production. They have deals for promotion. Sometimes they have agents. So they're actually small businesses. And that might get swept under the rug sometimes when everyone has stars in their eyes and is imagining, how can we get a big giant company like CrowdStrike to work with us? Haha. But yeah, the take home is this program should fit into that, as should a lot of people creating various types of content like this, audio, video, etc. Talking about things, interesting things, discussing possibilities. The Formula One, I don't know if you heard that. That was my notification tone on my Android device. The discussion about things like the impact of Formula One, racetrack construction, and actual various aspects of it oftentimes doesn't really get covered. And when it does, it gets covered more in blips, kind of human interest story, not, hey, there's possibly some problem here. Maybe ethical, maybe legal, the way certain benefits were conferred in one direction at the cost of production by a street, at the cost of smaller business suffering. And these things did happen. You just might not hear about them. It's unfortunate. And that's one of the things that should change. There should be more of visibility when it comes to knowing how things are functioning. Not, hey, everything was great. Unless you were one of the people that lost millions of dollars. Yeah, we just won't worry about those. Anyway, so if you have, this was a long tangent off of the, wherever you find your audio programming, hopefully there's an episode description with the summary of today's episode, which I will read to you now. It's a little update on some entrepreneurial effort. That's mine, especially against a topical backdrop of super big tech letting everyone down en masse. Remember, small business makes up the bulk of business in the U.S. We talked about this in previous weeks. I think it's 82% of small business in Vegas, in the United States, is solo. They employ no one. It doesn't mean you don't have multiple jobs. Doesn't mean one person doesn't have 10 small companies that are one person. But 82%, and in Nevada, it's about 80%. 80% of companies in Nevada employ no one. Presumably they have one person, but so bulk of businesses in the U.S. and in Nevada, and where you are most likely, novel ideas come from small, flexible cohorts doing cool things. A one-person company, while they may completely destroy the world with their silliness, it's not that easy. But if you are a company like CrowdStrike, or you've partnered with a company like Microsoft to provide their security solutions, and things go awry, well, I guess you'll be hearing about it today, tomorrow, over the coming days and weeks. So, good times. The cover art, by the way, is the infamous Sphere here in Vegas. They did not experience the blue screen of death on their platform. That is actually a troll. I don't know if I assume they put it back up. They surely could have, but this was from, it first made an appearance some time ago, and it's more of a humorous thing, but appropriate for today. So I do not believe they are not running Windows 10. I would hope not. And but if you are at the infamous Harry S. Reid International Airport here in Las Vegas, then you are seeing real blue screens of death. Hopefully you're on the ground when you see them. So good times. The links for today's episode also in your episode description. There's only one. There's two that are shameless self-promotion as usual, and then there's one for a CrowdStrike reference, so that sometime in the future, if somebody is watching or listening to this, probably listening since there's no video, you'll be able to look back in time a little bit. Although I'm going to guess, I'm going to guess for a long time searching for CrowdStrike and blue screen of death, or BSOD, the blue screen of death, you will probably find multiple articles, no matter what year it is, in the future, maybe in the past. Well, for you, in the past, but either way. The first two, of course, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo and Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. So both of them, Dan Hugo, DanHugo. You do not have to spend any money at either of these places, but I do use these to promote my various projects and programs. And so check them out if you like. You are welcome to contribute to the coffee fund. All my projects are powered by coffee, but you are not obligated. But as I start adding things when I have some spare time, not only will I be using the very platform I'm developing, but for the sake of maintaining continuity across my previous episodes and in the future, why not? The Buy Me a Coffee and Ko-fi.com platforms, they are not sponsoring me in any way, do provide a nice free, there's free tiers for both. And so just a free way to kind of provide some promotional references and links, vectors back to your projects that you don't have to maintain. It's a platform you don't have to maintain. That's why I first started using it. I call it out of band. It is not something I have to deal with directly. Although both could be better, they work. The CrowdStrike 3, is a CNBC link. In this case, it's just a rundown on a major IT outage. It is. Most headlines are adopting a sort of worst ever slant to their sensational headlines, but it's pretty bad. So Linux users like myself are not directly impacted, but unfortunately, well, anyway, let's get into it. First, the blues. I am not a Windows user, so I've had zero hands-on experience with this. I haven't experienced a blue screen of death in many years. I never actually owned a Windows machine of any kind myself. I was forced to use Windows for work in some cases, so we'll leave that there. But I have zero hands-on experience with this CrowdStrike situation. But surely we are all going to be impacted by another huge company fail at global scale. Could be you're flying, could be you're trying to make a purchase. If I go to the grocery store later in this afternoon, who knows if they're purchasing, if they're point of sale terminals, if they're self-service, what do you call it, kiosk for ringing up your purchases. So you'll have to do that. Hopefully that works, and then it has to read barcodes, and then you have to make a payment. Who knows if that will work? Frankly, I'm surprised anything is working right now, given the entrenchment of Windows. But we'll see. We'll see in the coming days and weeks what happens. This is not a Luddite presentation, however. I'm not going to tell you that all big companies are evil. You can watch Mr. Robot for that. But most are, because they have a profit motive, not a customer service motive. But there is also an inherent risk in relying completely on a single provider of services, such that if one thing goes wrong with that one provider, everything starts to collapse. And I don't need to provide any examples now. Because we got it. Small companies do interesting things, and while they succeed, according to some, when they become big giant companies, I mean, they succeed according to some as in, hey, it works. Not everybody would say that's success, but if your thing works, that's a good sign. When they become a giant company with global blast radius, they can cause real trouble. So if that's success, that's a different thing. The small companies are the ones that, and maybe individuals, maybe 80% of our companies here in Vegas that have no employees, some of them may be inventors or innovators or coders or creators or whatever they're doing. They'll do things, the next things perhaps, in unusual, novel ways, and good may come of it, and they'll get acquired by a big company, and then all the good stuff will go away. But don't always look to the BigCos, big companies. They always have an alternate agenda or ulterior motive, usually in favor of their shareholders. In fact, that is fiduciary responsibility, which is codified in law. You, as a corporation, for-profit corporation, if you have shareholders, then you are, and by the way, this probably applies, I'm not an attorney, probably applies to anyone involved in a private company. So you could be a private or public, you could have shares trading on an exchange, but you have a responsibility to your investors, to the people who are funding your operations, not necessarily less than you do to your customers. In fact, the fiduciary responsibility almost certainly outweighs your customer service responsibility. So yeah, keep that in mind. You are almost as important as the people paying. Excuse me, sorry, had to pause there for a second. Almost as important as the people paying for all this. If you're the one paying for it, of course, that makes perfect sense. But it's difficult to believe any customer service messages when that isn't always the case. This is the last thing I'll say on this, but do you think somebody at CrowdStrike was like, wait, should we test it one more time? And then someone else said, our investors are really breathing down our backs about this. We got to get this out. Who knows? Anyway, enough about that. The bottom up, instead of these big giant companies. One nice thing about starting a venture, solo or small group of people who kind of agree on an idea, even a nonprofit venture, is that there is often, not always, depends on what you're doing, but often a blank slate. New ideas not encumbered by, I wrote old ideas, but I think old methods probably makes more sense. Old ideas are the things that basically hold up new ideas. You have to start somewhere, standing on the shoulders of giants perhaps. But it's the old way of thinking and the old way of doing things that can sometimes get in the way of novelty. That's not the way we do it here. Well, yeah, but if we do it this other way, we can do it twice as fast, twice as much, etc. Usually, this is not always the case, but usually, and it's been sort of the driving force behind a lot of the things I've tried to accomplish, and some have been successful by some measure, and others not so much, always learning. We've been spending, we being me, I mean, the people I'm engaged with, they're just not in Southern Nevada. We've been spending some time on Project ACT, which I've described in a previous episode and also more so in the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. Project ACT is about autonomous cohort tessellation. What is tessellation? It's a mosaic. What do you mean by mosaic? I mean, imagine everybody that's working on things having a little tile, could be a square or a hexagon or something, and you make a little mosaic out of it. It's a visualization. It's not literally what we're doing. But the tessellation is a mosaic of people, autonomous cohorts, working on projects that are perhaps open source, perhaps civic volunteer based. Sometimes they are going to be community elevating. Sometimes we'll have some other, greater good component. The thing is, the goal is to enable connection, communication, and collaboration between not only cohorts, but individuals that are interested in pursuing these things. Anything, like I said, from civic volunteering to community elevation to educational entity interactions, which is something we'll get to, and collaborations, and maybe just something as simple as connecting nonprofit entities so they can discover each other and they may have common interests and so on. So there's no gatekeeping in this plan. There's no, you have to sign up for the nonprofit organizations of Southern Nevada.org. Well, what happens if they decide to go away or shut down or pull the rug? And this has happened with civic volunteer organizations that were brigades in the Code for America infrastructure. When Code for America pulled the sunset the brigade program for those people. So people who wanted to contribute their time to making their communities better or whatever were in a centrally planned top-down organization with paid employees telling them what to do. And then they decided at the top, we're going to pull the rug on this. Sunset it. And so now you have people who wanted to do good things left to their own devices. Good luck. See ya. Get off the Slack. No more Slack for you. So part of the challenge is to connect people who don't have infrastructure. They don't have a legal entity, like they're not a nonprofit corporation. They don't have a 501A determination of any kind, 501c3, like we do for Innovate for Vegas Foundation. And so what do? You signed up with Code for America and they kicked you out, essentially, en masse. So decentralizing is a way to connect with people without relying on a single source of effort. I recently came upon a spreadsheet, literally a shared Google document spreadsheet Is that just a Google spreadsheet? And it was a list of these organizations that were former brigades, and it was maintained by one person. And the internet history, by the way, is replete with people like, oh, it was one person maintaining the entire top level domain name, one person maintaining the email server stuff. So when you rely completely on one person in a world of automation and in a world where decentralization and communication and so on, these are all doable things. So Project ACT aims to connect individuals and cohorts of people, whatever their entity status, so they can collaborate on things. And if you're wondering, well, how do you do that? Well, wherever you find your audio programs, you can find them in multiple places. You don't need to, some of you who go to religiously perhaps to iTunes or to Spotify or etc. But anyone can publish an RSS feed, because RSS is essentially a decentralized way of sharing information. And if I decide to pull all of my podcasts, all of the RSS feeds can eventually kind of lazily die out. So there is no one place to say, I'm done. It actually works. It does work. So the effort here is to enable connection without relying on parties that can disappear whenever they feel the need. So that's step one. Another nice little thing about, so one nice thing, you can start a venture. You don't have to rely on old thinking. And another nice thing is you get to have your name attached to something. Now, you can be the founder, and that's usually the person that gets the credit. But if you're a small company, especially if you're working on open source efforts, you get to be acknowledged, because that's kind of part of the deal. So if you're working on open source projects and civic volunteer organizations and you find that you're not getting credit for your work, something is wrong. So small efforts that we're working on are all open source to begin, and that means attribution to people doing work, not just the coders. Anybody who makes a project go should get some credit for it. Oftentimes when you work for a big company, the bigger, the almost 100% more likely you're being paid by them. Doesn't really matter what your name is. It's our name goes on the label, on the tin, as they say. So giving people credit for their work, crazy, but it's something that not just the founding team, although that typically happens also. You'll see, I think Wiz is the latest, like a multi-billion-dollar acquisition by Google. So they have a picture of the founders. It's like 4 dudes with khakis on or something, like, oh, we're just 4 dudes. Was it only 4? It's hard to say. Who knows? But it's an option for small companies. But we're doing all our stuff is starting off as open source projects. Wait, starting off as open source? You can always monetize open source projects. So, but certainly the people that build the software are invited to participate in other related things, but they also get full credit for building what they do. The idea being you can take open source projects that you collaborate on and you can monetize them also. You can create a thing and say, hey, I contributed to this with these other people. So it sounds complicated. It's not. And it's not a new idea. So now on to education. One of the top level initiatives we wanted to pursue at the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, and again, that's our 501c3 Nevada nonprofit corporation. We got our 501c3 determination 2 years and 1 month ago, or effective 2 years and 1 month ago. So we're still young. One of our top level initiatives was to pursue education. So generically education. Southern Nevada has a track record of being at the bottom or near the bottom. Like if you're looking at states, Nevada will often be like 52, 53, because they're not sure how many states there are. No, I'm kidding. Will be like in the bottom 5, and Southern Nevada is often below what we could say Northern Nevada, I guess. Washoe County, Clark County, those are the 2 big population centers of the state. So Clark County School District, the largest single employer in Southern Nevada, doesn't always fare well. So I posited the notion, hey, some of our civic volunteer focus could be on what is going on with education. I don't know if you know this. The children are our future. That's what the song says. So it seems worthwhile to take a look at what's happening and to not take a look at it as a teacher per se, but as someone who, or as some group of people who think of things as projects, as ongoing timelines, as collaborations. Teachers have a different, the teachers are teaching individuals or classroom. Maybe you treat a classroom as just a classroom, but if you step out of the process, you may be able to identify issues. So the proposal was, hey, maybe we should start by meeting with students, teachers, parents, and getting some ideas about what's working and what is not. And that would help identify some initial projects. So there was a contact we had at CCSD, that's the school district. And they said, yeah, I have some junior and senior level high school students that you could start with. If you can put together a proposal, I'll bring it to the school and see if they're on board with, giving some time for this. So we had many interested educator and adjacent individuals here in the Southern Nevada area. Like, oh, I'd be very interested in this. Okay, so got everybody's email address, sent out an email. Here's where we are to get this ball rolling. We need to put together a proposal. So I've started a document here. It's shared. I started writing some things. I said, if anybody would like to contribute to this, add some ideas, take away some ideas, and we'll see what happens when we submit this. And got zero interest, none. So this is not uncommon in the Southern Nevada area. When you ask for action, you get silence. When you ask for interest, you get all manner of cheers, celebrate. Oh, add me to the list. I'm not going to do anything, but add me anyway. So that meant the efforts to pursuing these efforts in Southern Nevada would not go anywhere. So luckily, there are people outside of Southern Nevada that are interested in pursuing these ideas. They have an actual interest in improving education and whatnot. So as is typically the case, Nevada will take notice later. So maybe Southern Nevada, 5-10 years from now, they'll say, oh, maybe we should start thinking about that. And I will say that there's already pushback on increasing school education funding for public schools here. From what I understand, one of the primary arguments against is that they don't see a return on that money. So it's not worthwhile because maybe they don't understand how education works. The education takes a while and you realize a benefit later, like years later. But, and as is the case here in Southern Nevada, if you are geared more towards training a workforce of employees, if being a valet or a poker or dealer in general, or working in the service industry or the culinary industry, and I'm not putting any of those down, but if that's the goal, then your education system is geared for fueling your fun economy, but you're not training or providing early sort of notions, planting seeds of entrepreneurialism, of innovation. And this is not to say it's 100% missing or 0% present, but it is not so far. And this was from my research I did about just over a year ago. Geared a lot more towards employment, not necessarily towards education is not geared so much towards entrepreneurialism and thinking outside the box. So that's a problem. Maybe, depending on how you view things. So yeah, there are people outside Southern Nevada that do have that future outlook in mind. So we've shifted our efforts in our education space to collaborate in California to start, in Northern California, which will lead to collaborations with other open source developer cohorts in other places. If only we were working on some way to connect people to work on these sorts of projects. Interestingly, discussions just had yesterday about how much maligned Agile, which I've already done episodes of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. Agile is typically excuse me. The allergies still reign. The weather is my enemy. Agile is typically a software development methodology. It's aimed from its formation or from its creation at software development, the software development process, software developers, how they can get more value from their time, better interactions and collaboration, and so on. These all sound like horrible ideas. Unfortunately, Agile's been sort of co-opted by commercial interests and by project managers and upper management that wants to see work measurements, not necessarily maximizing productivity at the programmer level, but like, why are we not seeing more progress? Who's get the fewest story points? Get rid of them. So they're using it for things it was not initially designed for, I think. So anyway, so Agile's getting a kind of a minus, slightly maligned. And but for example, how do you measure if an individual student is learning? Are they learning fast enough? Are they learning enough? Now, this is not the answer to the problem, but I said similar to Agile story points, and again, much maligned. The idea is you say, okay, this looks like this particular thing that we want to accomplish, this piece, like add a login button to your website. Okay, that looks like 3 story points. Does that mean 3 hours of work? No, it means relative to other things that are easier and things that are more difficult. This is kind of in the middle if we're going on a 1 to 5 scale, for example. But what does that mean? Well, it depends. If somebody's working on it, but they're only working on it 1 hour a day because they have 7 hours of meetings, then maybe it will take 3 days, or maybe it will take 3 minutes. But on a spectrum of difficulty, you go from 1 to 3, and it's kind of in the middle. Yeah, but I need to know exact dollar figure. Well, we'll know that at the end, and that's similar to the way similar, not identical, but similar to the way education works. You can start out with a curriculum for the year, for an entire career at a public school, or however you want to break it down. Well, here are the things you're supposed to learn. How long should that take? How quickly should this be integrated into the next phases of you can ask a lot of these questions. It will depend on each student. Each person will bring I don't want to sound Marxist, but they'll bring their abilities to the table. Some will learn faster, some will learn more slowly. How do you include a self-assessment in that? Am I learning more quickly? Should I be learning more? Should I be reading more? Should I seek out a tutor? Often that's left to a teacher or a parent to notice, if they notice at all. So yeah, we're kind of throwing some ideas around. This is the joy, the beauty of small efforts that are entrepreneurial, innovative, not infrastructure and Microsoft. But yeah, maybe something similar to a story points could figure into this discussion. Just like, I'm not saying exactly, but yeah, don't hate, don't freak out. Like, oh my God, Agile's horrible. Probably because you've been forced to use some horrible version or some broken take. Safe. I've been in bad classroom situations, and I've been in bad workplace situations where the stand-up meeting and the project manager telling you what to do. Oh, but we can do it in the Agile framework. Well, these are not how things should be or could be. But it's just the way they are. So that's the thing to look at. And when you're a small entity, you can do that and not go ahead, ruffle feathers. Go ahead. No problem. On to engagement. This is something I've talked about already. The Greater Vegas area hosts about 40. I'm going to get some water. Let me pause here. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So let's get back to engagement. So the Greater Vegas area hosts about 40 million visitors each year. And I did check it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I actually talked about this in another episode of one of my programs. So the run rate for this year, for 2024, is on track to be, I think, slightly over 40 million, maybe 41 million visitors for the year. These are numbers that are tracked and reported by the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. They have something of a vested interest in publishing positive news. So I have my salt shaker handy, but based on some other, the sporting events, the Super Bowl, the Formula One, the what's coming on, some changes in like available entertainment, residences on the Strip, the Sphere without the blue screen has been making a lot of news lately. So generally speaking, it's believable. Whether it's precise or accurate or both is debatable, but it's probably close. So 40 million visitors Previously, 2023, I think it was also right in there. I took a quick glance at that, and I think it was close. If it was 39, 40, something like that. So within the error bars, sure. So we got a lot of people coming here, which means there are many people interested in some or all of the fun economy. So the 5 pillars, if I am remembering them correctly, is gaming, conventions, tourism, that is just generally coming here to hang out, entertainment, and professional sports, gambling on professional sports perhaps, which is separate from gaming in a casino, operationally, legally, etc. So the fun economy draws people to Vegas, and so the fun economy services those people drawn to it. That's totally fine. That's how business works. Maybe in some specific company or service or product only available by visiting here in person. So maybe some people are coming for that. Maybe there's some small venture or something that's only available here. Possibly something like you want to go see the rocks, the painted rocks. I cannot remember what the name of that attraction is. Maybe you want to see the sphere. Maybe you want to see, maybe you're just here to see it. You're not even going to go inside. Maybe you're here for fireworks on it could be 4th of July, it could be New Year's. So technically those happen in other places, but there's something about the Vegas thing. So it's like an augmentation to the fun economy in that case. Either way, the fun economy is not going anywhere. There's an effort to diversify the economy, and that's totally fine, but there is a tremendous amount of money coming in for the fun economy. Putting it at risk, it seems like it would be a bad idea. Maybe you're coming here to work with others. Maybe that's some of the visitors are collaborating in person because they're remote working. Wouldn't that be interesting? As I've mentioned so many times, local media in the greater Vegas area tends to focus on the fun economy, of course, crime, politics, same thing, and things that are big dollar. So they're much more interested in the Tropicana being torn down for a baseball stadium and the Oakland A's moving here to become the Athletics or whatever is going to happen with that. Hey, the Super Bowl should be here every year. Hey, Formula One racetrack construction begins soon. Again, everybody's going to love that. So you'll very often hear about these big dollar items, the biggest casino getting torn down or being built or opening with a new thing or the latest, attraction. So it all fits into the fun economy or big dollars or both. Startups get very little attention. Small business that isn't a bar or restaurant, because there's like a whole separate culture and sort of some media momentum, I suppose, behind promoting restaurants and bars, and that includes content creators, but also in general, there's excitement over a new restaurant opening. There's sadness when a popular restaurant closes, and so on. So those entrepreneurial endeavors, if they are, get more attention. That can change with our My Muni project platform, My Community, My Municipality, and the welcome variant. So the welcome part of a platform would focus more on people not living where the platform is focused. So My Muni would be for Southern Nevada or Greater Vegas, focused on the things that matter to people who live here, where the welcome project might be oriented more towards parts of the fun economy. And I will say, people that live in Vegas are not 24/7 down to fun economy. Every day is not like, oh, how much gambling and entertainment can we take in today? I often tell people I go to the grocery store and I read and I watch TV sometimes. Not really TV, but there's just normal life here. So the normal life stuff is not quite as exciting as the welcome side of that coin. So there you go. So we can actually explore possibilities of not only our 2.3 million people that live in Clark County, but the 40 million people visiting, and try out some ideas. If we can take advantage of an extended collaboration network that we're working on building through Project ACT. So we say, hey, would you like to participate in the development of a platform that is not WordPress? It's not Hey, let's put headline, inverted pyramid, picture, fill the entire bottom half of a web page with native advertising that's junk, right? Actually engage with communities, provide something that is not awful like Nextdoor, actually connects resources, but also keeps track of resources over time. We can make use of tricky things like maps and timelines and charts, and you could actually show different places on a map as they relate over time for different kinds of events. Like, here are the businesses that were impacted by the Formula One racetrack, and here's how much they lost, and here's why you should know that. That information can be lost in a one-shot article, or it can always be a part of sort of a dashboard of things happening. That's one idea we're throwing around. So a platform that's built for this, not for just dumping words in a blog format and calling it a local news website, but something a little bit more creative, keeping up with modernity. Right? So if we can invite other people to do this, then we can try out ideas on the 40 million people visiting, the 2.3 million people living here, and collaborate with others in their respective localities and whatever the population and tourism are like there. So now you can start cross-pollinating different ideas. And as long as you don't say, well, we're writing this for Vegas. No, we're writing it for anyone. That's the way most things should be thought of, right? Not all. Sometimes that makes sense. But it makes no sense for us to volunteer our time and efforts to elevate our communities with a platform that only works in Vegas, especially with those 40 million people. We can't account for all 40 million, but we can ask them. So if we can include people from other places, we get a large network of collaboration and cooperation, and other people can deploy their stuff. And hey, maybe they want to try out an idea here in Vegas too. Maybe I'll get to that in the next section. Anyone contributing to the project can bring with them the local view of what they have going on, what's needed, and we can build a platform that isn't WordPress and which also is not a one-trick pony. By the way, this is something I've seen several times. Civic volunteers will sometimes start a project. This is my observation. It could be I'm reading it wrong. They'll start a project and they'll come up with something, and then it kind of falls by the wayside. And then there'll be a different project, some other group, some other place, or maybe the same top level cohort, like the organization, if they're a nonprofit or a fiscally sponsored entity or whatever. Like, oh, we're going to do something that's sort of similar, but they have a completely different approach to it, a completely different type of source code, a different, whatever it is, a lot of differences. I don't know that they're reusing things. I don't know if they're making the project that they, even if it's open source, if they're making other people aware, if they're writing their project in such a way as that it can be extended, or the take home is that thinking in terms of one project at a time, rather than how can this project fit with other projects? How can we make use of it across different focal areas, etc.? I mean, maybe that's startup thinking. Even though startup thinking will tend towards a minimally viable product, an MVP, which kind of is the same thinking. But I think if you think long term and long tail, you might take a different tack. So maybe it's not startup thinking. Anyway, more engagement. Let's have more engagement, because I just talked about engagement. Why not have more? So the fun economy draws those 40 million or so visitors from all over. I didn't look at how much domestic versus international visitors, what the ratio is. I do know, of course, post-pandemic, as there was a return. Wow. Production by a street. I do know that as there was a return to the fun economy, that a lot of the visitor base was only domestic. That was just the nature of global travel. So I'm not sure if that's returned or if that's been on the upswing to have international visitors, but either way, it makes sense that all the fun economy is tuned to provide some return on the investment for those visitors making their trips and travels, paying their money. That's why we don't have income tax here. There is a notion, mistaken perhaps, that a company must relocate to the Southern Nevada area in order to offer some new kind of innovation. You'll have companies that are doing self-driving vehicles. It's not unmanned. What is it? It's I don't remember what they're calling it. Anyway, it's autonomous vehicles. So there are a couple of companies that are trying it out because Nevada Southern Nevada in particular, legalized the operation of autonomous vehicles on the streets. So you could try these things out and you can have tourists try them. So they kind of get it. Do you have to okay, say you're, I think Siemens Nixdorf, or is it just Siemens now? I can't remember. They have some small number of people working on a self-driving vehicle platform here in Vegas. Does that mean the entire company had to move here? No. You can open an office here of a small number of people. You don't have to think in terms of like, maybe if we relocate 1,000 people here or 150 or 10,000, like, is that really good? Probably not. So you don't need to move to Southern Nevada. However, you should have access to the people visiting here. So it does make sense to have a small number of people here. If you're testing out a hardware product like a car, or if you're testing out a software product like an app, or if you're testing out a new service or something, sure, it makes sense to have a presence here, but you don't need to relocate your entire company to Nevada. That is something that is being pitched sometimes, and hopefully they are not catching it. The example I give is a Formula One. None of the Formula One teams that participated in the race relocated their companies, their ownership, teams and whatnot. None of them relocated to Vegas. They came here, they did their thing, they left. The teams at the Super Bowl, same thing. So you can have a presence here without relocating here. So I think that's important to keep in mind. If you are not aligned with the fun economy, you have to ask yourself whether it makes complete sense to, and we'll come down to like tax write-offs or other incentive programs put up by the state, the GOED, Governor's Office of Economic Development, or the county or the city. We'll see how that unfolds with Hollywood 2.0. I believe Sony Pictures is investing, is it $1.8 million? 1.8 million? That doesn't sound, that might be $billion. They're investing a lot of money in a studio project to enable production of movies here. And Mark Wahlberg is our lone celebrity that's driving that effort. His name is all over it. So we'll see how that goes, but people are not coming here to watch movies being made. So it will come down to the incentive programs and the value proposition is very different. But I don't know if all companies are thinking that, or if they're just thinking, how much can we save on taxes? Because it's always an interesting challenge when you relocate to Vegas. If you relocate to Vegas with your company and then your company decides to not stick around, are you compatible with the workplace environments here? Or do you have to become entrepreneurial? Hey, that might work out after all. Who knows? So there has to be some ROI, though, to really make sense. Easily, kind of the first pass would be, are we going to benefit from having 40 million people floating around? So there's a notion, though, mistaken perhaps, that a company must relocate, like I said, and that the people that relocate here they get to live in Vegas. I kind of want to circle back on that because I actually had a college friend who passed away, unfortunately, many years ago. But when we were in college, he used to say, how come all companies don't start in Vegas? Like, why would you not want to say, hey, come to Vegas? And when you think about it, if you are a innovation technology company and your big draw is, hey, we're in Vegas, you're not necessarily sending the message that you want people to work on your project. You want them to come to Vegas and, have fun in Vegas. Now, I'm not saying that Vegas is not a fun place. It's certainly an interesting place. But if that's the selling point, that'd be a question I would ask. But in general, there's the notion that we must relocate to Vegas. Tricky, especially because the no tax thing, if you have remote workers, doesn't always universally apply. I encountered this when I worked at Intel. And in fact, I think the laws changed recently. Just a fun fact, side note, when I was working for Intel Corporation, which is based in Oregon. Now, had they been based in California, it may have been more difficult. Based in Oregon. So when I worked for Intel in Nevada, they actually kind of screwed up my paycheck. The first paycheck I got, I was taxed in Oregon because I'm like, hey, what's going on? Oh, we messed up. So it's always nice to get apologies from the upper management. So they actually have a thing called Intel Americas, which is a separate company that they can form in different states. So they had a foreign corporation operating in Nevada called Intel Americas, and they had one employee. So they were part of that 80%. And so Intel Americas paid me. So I was paid here. And that is something to be aware of if companies want to have a presence in Nevada, but have employees in other cities or states. California, for example, I believe if you're a California company and you have employees in other states, they still have to pay the income tax in California. What I think might also be the case is if you're a Nevada company and you're employing people. No, I think this works anyway. A Nevada company and you're employing people in California, you would pay income tax, whatever the fraction is, there. Anyway, I'm not a tax preparer, but I'm saying that it's not super easy to just operate here with people in different places, but it is something to think about. Now, we do have plenty of hotel rooms and things to do. You can do plenty of things. There are family-friendly entertainment venues, more focus on family-friendly, certainly movie theaters, shopping, you can go hiking, people watch on the strip, etc. So there's all kinds of family-friendly stuff here. To be honest, it is not your Rat Pack Vegas anymore. The ability to come here, conduct business, I always call them innovation sprints. The innovation value in Greater Vegas, I think, is available to anyone as an innovation destination city, not as an infrastructure-laden innovation hub. Now, I always tell people, when I was in Silicon Valley, when I was in Bandcamp, if you wanted to create some new technology, not only was there a culture of innovation, not only was there a talent pool that was deep and expensive, but there were resources around to enable prototyping. You wanted a circuit board, you want some quick turn chips, you want some infrastructure, you want some server farm, whatever you needed was around. I need to get FCC certified. You could probably get FAA certified there now. I spent a couple days at a FCC certification facility in Mountain View because we wanted to make sure our computers that we were making were not emitting non-compliant radio waves. So you got to get your FCC certification. You can go right over there and do it. If I was going to do that in Nevada, I have no idea if that's even possible here. So having a resource-rich environment. And by the way, we don't really have a usable asset map here because that hasn't been thought of either. So these are the things that small companies can tackle in a place as chaotic and disjoint as Vegas is. But it could be treated much more as an innovation destination city and cater to its core fundamental value proposition, which is come here, do your thing, and then go back home. So there's the fun economy. Maybe there should be a remote work economy or an innovation economy. So then when you're working on the thing, some innovation, you might benefit from a co-creation element. Now, if you're not familiar with co-creation, there are a few different types, different tiers. But bottom line, you're asking people to use or try or test your thing, whatever you're working on, product, service, and they can tell you what they think. So you can find out if you're totally off the rails. I often will tell people, you want an example? Has anyone ever said, here, taste this. Tell me what you think. That's co-creation if they're cooking the food. So you could engage perhaps with a diverse population visiting a locality from all around the world. And you could provide, or they could provide some feedback to you directly. It's entirely possible that I am also working on something for exactly this, which I will talk about in later episodes when I have some more water. So I do have this weekly program. You're listening to it right now. Maybe you listen to it around the time it's published, or maybe you will have jumped in later for me. No, later for you too, I guess. You will have jumped in and gone back in time to listen to this episode and maybe some others. Like, what was this guy talking about way back when? Maybe you're listening to the back catalog, or maybe you've mistakenly come upon it. Who knows? Either way, I have been chanting the same things as a theme each week, and you can go and check that. So I'm sorry if this is boring, but I'm not sorry, actually. There is no way that Southern Nevada is going to be the next Silicon Valley. Not in the next 30 years, at least. I've talked about this before. Silicon Valley kind of got its start in the kind of the mid 40s, 45-ish, 46, 47, when Professor Terman went to Stanford to be the dean of engineering. There was government money to spend on research. There were the Hewlett and Packards of Silicon Valley that were in their early stages of starting in sheds and garages and so on. The culture of innovation very strong there, et cetera. So, Silicon Valley did not spring up in 1993 out of nowhere. It was a emergent process with a lot of coincidences, nice weather, the availability of capital, of course, all kinds of things lined up over time. You don't just sprinkle money on top and say, look, another Silicon Valley. So we can build a better thing, a better Vegas, a better Greater Vegas, a better Clark County, something like that. You can do that in your community too. You cannot or should not, in my opinion, simply say we should be another Silicon Valley, Silicon Gulch, Silicon Alley, Silicon whatever. I've heard people say, oh, we're the Silicon Sandbox. No, we are not. It's just not the same. And as I often point out as well, Silicon Valley started because of people like Shockley Semiconductors moving from Bell Labs to Menlo Park to live near his mom, started a semiconductor company after getting his Nobel Prize for the transistor. Fairchild Semiconductor formed when the traitorous 8 departed Shockley because they hated him. 2 went on to form Intel directly, Robert Noyce and Gordon Moore. And those were actual silicon technology companies, Intel, Fairchild, Shockley, many more. So anybody who calls something Silicon Valley because they want to have a lot of people with laptops developing software is thinking they got money, they got dollar signs in their eyes. Like, oh, they made so much money. Don't be careful what you wish for, as I like to say. So making better use of the population and the resources, and so people can succeed and you're not going to crush people with gentrification and so on. It's something that I don't know that people are taking seriously. We have done, what did I write here? We've done very little I left out the word little. We've done very little to move in that direction in any sort of coherent way. And again, I've said this many times. So all of it remains to be seen. The education component I feel is extremely important, but that's generally true, especially in if we're seeing a demographic slowdown. So we don't have as many people doing things as there may have been many years ago. So it's I've heard this said, you know what? You already know the maximum number of 65-year-old people in the United States who will be born in the United States and turn 65 years from today. You know what the maximum number is. You know how you know that? Because they were born today. That number doesn't change tomorrow. There's a different number tomorrow because it's every day. So every day there are a lot of calculations that can be done about how the future will look from an economic standpoint, from just a plain population standpoint. Similarly, you can look at how Vegas could be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, because things that take time must begin today. So that's why I think education is important here in particular. But you also just don't get to sprinkle money on top of a place and change its nature. And that's why the analogies between biological ecosystems, the science of ecology, is apropos for thinking about people, cities, local economies, and so on, because they are actually similar. They take time. There's a climax community. There's a carrying capacity, other analogs. So we're not really doing anything of any useful sort of tangible value, I guess, to say, yeah, we're definitely going to be the next Silicon Valley. We're saying it. I hear this all the time, and I've suggested that people should knock that off. If I heard people saying, we're going to be better Vegas. Okay, what does that mean? We're going to have more pitch nights for startups. Okay, that's not horrible, but not quite it. Anyway, none of this I'm saying right now does not mean there cannot be an entrepreneurial, innovative ecosystem. It doesn't mean we can't cultivate an innovation culture. The entrepreneurial culture here is actually fine when you think about it, as long as you don't think that entrepreneurs must be writing software. They must be developing the next unicorn. Well, what if you just want to start a food truck or open a retail establishment or write a book or be a content creator, right? Entrepreneurialism is not necessarily developing software. So if we would embrace that more, we would probably be slightly healthier. Innovation is a little bit trickier, but people do it frequently. So entrepreneurial innovation, two great tastes. They don't have to go together, but they do. People doing their thing here in Greater Vegas is not uncommon. People open restaurants and bars, like I said, and other adventures frequently. Hopefully one day they will not be too busy to join me for an episode. It would be fascinating to talk to people who do real things. Hey, tell us about your tech startup. Fun fact, you can't do that too many times in Vegas because there aren't millions of them. Allegedly there are thousands, but that's not really true either. So I'll try reaching out to people more to have these conversations as I get more of the my Muni stuff in place. In the meantime, there is a ton of opportunity in the chaos that is this place. So I don't want to tell people to run away, but I do want to tell them to not presume that, oh, this is going to be the next Silicon Valley. And one of these days, I'm really on the fence at this point about the downtown project retrospective. What is the value proposition for today to try to track down? Because, there's still Vegas people, so that means they won't really care. The value proposition for downtown project for people who were there. What did they get from it? What could have been better? What could have been done to provide more of a fertile environment? Now, I'm not saying what should have been done for you, and this is often a mistake that I run into here in Vegas all the time. Hey, I want to be production by the street. Hey, I want to be entrepreneurial. Tell me what to do. I got to get that. That's a t-shirt. That's waiting to be done. That might be an episode title next week. So there are certainly things to do here. Anybody leaning into the fun economy and businesses around that, first of all, you have to be concerned about being crushed by the fun economy and the profit motives and preferences for things like stadiums and racetracks and whatnot. But it is an interesting place to build things that are compatible with the fun economy and with the chaos of what you could call the wild, wild west. If you can have remote teams to come now and then to partake in the fun economy and maybe some work, you might be better off. That's all I'm going to say for today. But yeah, I have a lot of work to do, and I think some cool stuff is starting to actually line up. And so I will thank you for listening. My voice is very clearly in need of hydration. Perhaps I am as well. Don't forget, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo for, sorry, had to get some more water there too. For program updates, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. My voice has already left the building. So thank you.